Hello, everybody. My name's Zach, the Director of Public Affairs at Goodlawyer. Thanks, Adil and Brett, for that excellent intro. It's so exciting to have you all joining us today, and very exciting to have Dean Holloway with us to kick off day one of the Goodlawyer Summit, Future of Law. Dean Holloway is Dean of Law at the Faculty of Law, University of Calgary. He's one of North America's foremost legal innovators, having spent over 20 years as a professor and Dean of Law at the University of Calgary, at the University of Western Ontario, and also at an Australian legal school. So it's an absolute honor to have you here. Welcome.
Thank you, Zach. I'm delighted to be with you.
So as I was alluding to, you are the perfect guest for this kind of conversation on the future of law school. Me, on the other hand, I'm not sure why they asked me to be up here. Not a lawyer, didn't attend law school, but
It's never too late.
I don't think Goodlawyer would let me. But I will bring an outsider's perspective, and I'll try to pull your best insights
Sure.
out of you. So, as an outsider, law school has a few different reputations. Among them, it's extremely challenging and competitive. It's a lot of fun. But I've also heard that it's sometimes impractical, not preparing students well for that first law job. When you hear law school, what do you think of?
Well, let me tell you what I think what law school should be. It should be rigorous, it should be relevant, and it should be realistic. It should be a little bit scary too. Not too scary, but a bit of scariness is not a bad thing to keep us on task, keep us on edge. But I often talk about the three modern legal education R's, the three R's: relevant, realistic, and I forgot.
Rigorous?
Rigorous,
Yeah.
of course, rigorous, absolutely.
Excellent. So I've seen a quote on the University of Calgary Faculty of Law website from yourself saying that it's your job to prepare students for the profession that they're entering, not the profession that you entered.
That's right.
So what is it that law students need to be taught today that students of previous generations were not?
Well, Zach, one of the things that's happening is that our professional world is turning faster and faster. And partly it's because of the confluence of globalization and the technological revolution. Because of that confluence, the kinds of legal services that people need, and remember, we exist to serve the public. So the kinds of legal services that people need and the way in which they want to access those services, both of those things are changing dramatically. And because of that, the legal profession needs to change. It either needs to change or become irrelevant. And because of that, it follows that we who train the next generation of legal professionals need to change as well. So today's law students need to be a bit more entrepreneurial than we were. They certainly need to have a much deeper sense of global mindedness than we did. They need to be more technologically aware, tech savvy than we were. And I think that they just have to, from an earlier stage, begin to accept responsibility for shaping their own futures than we did.
I think those are great skills to highlight: entrepreneurialism, tech savviness, great things to be adding into the legal curriculum. But I imagine you only have so much time in a law degree. What do you need less of in law schools to be able to fit in these new things?
I'm not sure that we need less of much. I mean, maybe I'd say less rote learning, but there isn't that much rote learning anyway. I'm not sure that the mission is really to take stuff out of law school, but rather to put what we put into law school, put it in a way that meets the three R's: relevant, rigorous, and realistic. Mm-hmm. If we do that, then we can deepen the learning experience, because that's really the objective at the end of the day. It's not so much what we teach students in law school, but rather what students learn in law school.
Mm-hmm. I heard you mention on the Goodlawyer podcast, which it's fantastic to have you on there. You mentioned that students learn best when they're able to roll up their sleeves and get their hands dirty with ideas. What did you mean when you said that, and what does that look like in the context of a legal education?
Well, the conventional model of legal education that we use in North America was developed in the latter part of the 19th century. And it was based upon the bifurcation of responsibility for legal education. And the model was that students would spend 3 years in a university setting learning legal principle, and then, at least in Canada, spend a year as an apprentice, which we call it being an articling student, learning the practical nuts and bolts. But the reality is we know a lot more now about how adults learn and how adults retain than they knew in the latter part of the 19th century. And what the research tells us, and research done by brain scientists, tells us is that adults learn and retain best when they integrate theory and practice, when they integrate why and how. And so when I talk metaphorically about rolling up one's sleeves and getting one's hands dirty with ideas, that's what I'm talking about. I'm actually talking about deepening the learning experience through giving students the opportunity to practice, to play with, to model the things the principles that they're learning in law school. I sometimes say that a lawyer with theory but no skill is useless, and a lawyer with skill but no theory is just a malpractice case waiting to happen. Mm-hmm. And I believe that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that's a great point. I think it's pedagogically wrong to try to divide the legal education into the theoretical taking place at law school and then the practical taking place through an apprenticeship or through articling.
It's a false dichotomy. It's an absolutely false dichotomy.
Mm-hmm. And unfortunately, I guess this persists in many law schools in Canada. I've heard from friends who've graduated from Canadian law schools that it can be overly theoretical. And sometimes they arrive on their first day at that law job and they get asked to draft a contract and they go, shit, I've never written a contract in my life. And that's despite having passed a class
called contracts. I've never seen a contract in my life. No, I think if you talk to virtually every Canadian lawyer today, we all have those terrifying memories of the first day, the first time a lawyer asks you to do something, and you think to yourself, good God, I learned nothing in law school. I can't do anything at all. Mm-hmm. So that's what we're trying to remedy at the University of Calgary.
Yeah, it sounds like more hands-on learning, the better.
The more hands-on learning, the better, because theory and skills go hand in glove. One doesn't come at the expense of the other. Mm-hmm. It actually, one deepens the other.
So is this what you're doing with the curriculum here in Calgary, trying to offer a lot more hands-on learning experiences? Yes.
I often say, as you noted, that our mission is to prepare students for the profession they're joining, not the one that we joined. And no doubt their profession is looking very different from the profession that I joined. And I'm not that old, but as I say, our world's turning faster and faster. And so what we're doing at Calgary is we're doing our best to deepen. It's always been there. There's always been a bit there, but to deepen the extent to which we integrate theory and skills in the classroom. And we start that from the first day of law school, and it carries on through to the last day of law school.
Mm-hmm. One thing I've heard that's part of the Calgary curriculum is something called the Innovation Internship Program. Sounds like a great opportunity for students. Maybe could you tell us what was the impetus for creating that program, and what does participation look like for students?
Sure. Yeah. No. It's one of our more exciting recent innovations. Calgary, Alberta. Many Canadians aren't aware of this. Many Albertans aren't aware of this. But this province is actually a hub for innovation, for legal tech and innovation. There are very, very exciting things happening here, including Goodlawyer, including you guys, and we are Calgary's law school, and so we want above all else to be embedded in our community. We want to be part of Calgary's future, and it fits with our institutional mission to be known as one of North America's more innovative law schools. And so we put together a program whereby we place students in summer jobs. I'm not sure that we're going to be able to afford to do it this way forever, but up until now, we've paid half the salary. The employer has paid half the salary, and the students have been employed on various sort of tech or innovation projects. One of the neat things is that the range of employers involved in our innovation internship program really reflects it spans the whole breadth of our profession. There are big national and global law firms who are participants in it, and there are 1 or 2 person startups, and that reflects the way that constructive innovation is taking place in our profession.
It sounds like a great opportunity
Oh,
for the
it's wonderful.
students.
Yeah, it's wonderful.
Yeah.
And whether the students end up, embracing tech, becoming techies themselves, or whether they opt in the end for a more conventional legal career, that doesn't matter. The fact is that they've been exposed to this, and they're going to be better lawyers for it.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Sounds like a program that Goodlawyer would love to participate in.
Well, you know where I work.
Yeah. And I'm sure there's a government program that could help with the funding side as well. That's my area at Goodlawyer. I'm aware of a lot.
Let's hope so, Zach. Yeah.
There's this old adage in education that what you learn outside the classroom is just as important as what you learn inside of it. In law schools, you have clubs, you have things like student legal assistance, where students are offering pro bono help to members of the community. And what I've heard is that some of these experiences are the most valuable parts of a legal education.
Very much.
Could you talk to the importance of these outside the classroom learning experiences? And do you think law schools are doing enough to enable their students to take advantage of those opportunities?
Yes. I think that most law schools are doing enough. Maybe a different way to phrase the question is, are we doing... There are enough opportunities, but are we doing enough to encourage students to take advantage of those opportunities? That may be a better way to phrase it. And probably we could do more. I will say, Zach, this is one of the things that has troubled me most about law school in the pandemic. We were able to shift the pedagogy online pretty efficiently. I mean, we made mistakes and there are bumps in the road, and we still make mistakes and there's still bumps in the road. But on the whole, the classroom part of law school worked reasonably well online. The part that I worried and continue to worry about most is what I might call the extracurricular professional formation that, as you noted, is so important to us. We're starting. We hope that we may be getting close to the back end of the pandemic, so we're starting to gear up our clubs and activities again. But it's absolutely critical. But partly because of the experience, but also partly because of the friendships and the relationships that one develops.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's extremely important, especially in first year, creating those social connections, friendships, professional connections that stay with you the rest of your career.
Completely, you're absolutely right.
To zoom in on legal tech for a second, new technologies are disrupting virtually the entire economy, including the legal sector. You've got AI and machine learning changing the way that lawyers practice, and you've got practice management software and marketplaces that are changing the business of law. Do you think law schools are doing enough to educate their students on legal tech?
In a word, no. But we're doing more than we did, and we're all looking to do more than we are now. At Calgary, for example, we now offer a course in AI and the law. We offer a course in marketing and client development. We offer a course in project management. We offer a course in leadership. A whole bunch of courses like that are quite alien to the conventional model of legal education, but which we believe go to that mission of preparing them for the profession they're joining, not the one we joined. But I do think that there's room to grow in terms of what I'll call, I won't just say tech, but I'll say the innovation in the innovation area. And one of the ones that I'm particularly hoping that we're going to be able to start teaching at Calgary is law and big data. I think one of the skill sets that more lawyers are going to need to develop going forward is how to work comfortably with big data. That's a gap in most law school curricula right now.
So I imagine there's some students watching today who see that technology is disrupting the profession and they want to ride that wave. They want to be a protagonist in the digital transformation of law. What advice would you give to a student like that?
Well, I mean, I'd encourage them to think about which courses they take in law school, to get involved in things like the innovation internship program, to join clubs, but also when they are looking for their first jobs, to be more active agents in their own future. It happens every year where students choose jobs that aren't right for them. But what makes it really tragic is when they know it's not right for them going in. So to be more confident in the choice of their career. Now, there's nothing to stop them from changing. The sociologists tell us that our students today are going to have 3 or 4 careers in their working lives. And one of the great things about a legal education is that it's always possible to reinvent oneself. I mean, I've done that multiple times. But to be more conscious of the responsibility they have for shaping their own future.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
the surest way to prepare for the future is to create your own, as they say.
Mm-hmm. I like the way you framed it as student being an agent, an active player in their own career, and in their education as well, rather than just being a recipient of knowledge from a professor who's a holder of knowledge. Flipping that in and looking at the student as an agent and the professor as more of a guide, helping them understand the opportunities that exist for someone with a legal education.
Exactly. That's a great way to put it, Zach.
So you've been at law schools, as I said, for over 20 years as a professor and dean. I'm sure you've seen a lot, but this is about the future of law. So where do you see Canadian law school 20 years from now?
Well, that's a great question, and I think the honest answer is the lawyer's answer to most questions, and that is it depends. But it does depend. It depends upon where the Canadian legal profession is 20 years from now. We see great changes taking place in the way law is practiced, and therefore in the way in which law is taught in Great Britain and in Australia, to an extent, those countries can, give us a sense of what our future may look like. But it really depends upon how much stomach our profession in this country has for change. I don't want to sound, too stark in what I'm about to say, but I actually believe that the Canadian legal profession does have a stark choice, and that is it either innovates or it becomes irrelevant. It won't happen overnight, but it will happen.
Mm-hmm. Might it be possible to earn a JD 20 years from now from something like LinkedIn Learning or Coursera?
That's a good question. I mean, on the basis of way LinkedIn Learning and Coursera are now, my answer would be I hope not, because the law still is a social profession. The value that we add to someone's life tends to be personal. It tends to involve personal interaction. And so a legal education without that opportunity to develop that kind of skill set as well, the skill set of engaging constructively with people, I'm a bit leery about that.
Mm-hmm.
For all that I'm keen on innovation, and I said earlier that we need to do more in the tech area and so on. We can't do that. I believe we can't do that at the cost of forgetting that we exist to serve people.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I can definitely agree with your point that a 100% remote JD would lose a lot of the benefits that you get from these outside the classroom opportunities and the social side of it all.
Now, I will say that there are a couple of law schools in the United States that are experimenting with online JDs. There's one I know of in Australia, and so we'll know. I mean, if we pay attention, there are experiments in legal systems which are similar to ours, which are taking place. So we'll know in a few years' time.
Mm-hmm. And there would need to be some serious regulatory changes for something like that to come to Canada.
Yes, at the moment it would be forbidden.
Yeah. What other regulatory changes do you think are worth exploring that might improve law school in Canada?
Well, again, law school in Canada, needs to and should follow changes in the kinds of needs for legal services that ordinary people have. So let me do another thing lawyers do, and that is answer a different question, and talk about what kinds of regulatory changes I think the profession needs, because that will allow more experimentation. And my own view, and this is not mainstream, I will say, it's controversial, but my own view is that we should be more open in Canada to what they sometimes call ABSs, alternative business structures. To take family law, for example. The way it works now, put crudely, it's a bit too crude, but it's more or less accurate, is that someone who's going through a divorce or some kind of familial tragedy certainly has legal issues, but they also have emotional issues. They might have financial issues, and so what happens now is that either a family lawyer plays amateur psychologist, amateur counselor, amateur financial advisor, or she or he deals with the legal issue and sends the client to multiple other people. Why wouldn't it make sense that a workplace could have lawyers and counselors and financial advisors all in one place? Why doesn't one-stop shopping in a context like that make sense? Conversely, a startup certainly needs legal assistance, but they also need assistance in securing finance, in HR, and so many other things as well. Why is our profession structured in a way that all those people can't work in the same entity? Mm-hmm. So more openness to these so-called ABSs, I think, would go a long way in helping our profession, our Canadian lawyers, continue to be relevant.
And to serve the public.
And that's why we exist.
Which is why you exist. And a statistic we often quote at Goodlawyer is that 77% of legal needs receive no professional help.
They're on. If you think about it, you guys work in the startup space. If you think about it, at a time when a startup most needs a lawyer, it's the time when they can least afford it. And so, one of the reasons that so many businesses, go belly up, because of business miscalculations, but a big chunk of them go belly up because they make bad legal decisions early on.
Yeah, and a common example is in the formulation of your business. You're coming to an agreement with your co-founder on division of responsibility and who's owning the company. And if you don't have a lawyer to kind of help talk this through with you, it can really set you up for a conflict that can lead to the destruction of the business down the road.
Absolutely. And that goes to another of the things that we've done at Calgary. So you talked about student legal assistance, which is a wonderful, wonderful clinical program that provides free legal services for people in need. But we also have something called the Business Venture Clinic, which is supported by one of the big law firms. So it shows that the spirit of partnership in action. And so we provide free legal services to entrepreneurs for precisely the reason that you adverted to.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. It's just so difficult for these entrepreneurs, in our experience, to even know what legal hurdles that they need to cross, let alone to get over them with their limited financial means.
Absolutely, yeah.
And often they'll try Googling it or ask a friend for a contract that they could use as a template or something, and they might get away with using that some of the time, but as you alluded to, it's opening them up to risks down the road. So
terrible risks, yeah.
Not to plug Goodlawyer too hard, but that's exactly the kind of problem that we exist to try to solve.
That's why Goodlawyer is such a great organization.
Thank you. So to bring it away from that plug a little bit and back to the future of legal education, you spoke about how under this Harvard model, which still persists, that the practical, the hands-on side is kind of the responsibility of lawyers and firms to offer that training. But you've spoken in the past critically about articling as an institution. What is it that you're critical of, and what might we be able to do to improve that side?
Sure. I'm not critical of individual lawyers who take articling students. The fact is that almost every lawyer who takes on the responsibility for training an articling student does so dutifully. What I'm critical of is I'm critical of is as a system, because it pretends to a one-size-fits-all model. So that's one problem. So that I go, say, I article at a big commercial firm, and then I decide not to stay, or they decide not to keep me on. I'm admitted to the bar, and then so the next day, subject to my own sense of my limitations, I'm qualified to do murder defenses. I mean, that's which is just crazy. I'm critical because it's based on a short-term spot market for legal services. You know, I mean, to use Alberta metaphors, if you have the good fortune to graduate when oil's at 100, you will get an articling position. If you graduate when oil's at 10, you could be, Einstein reincarnate, and you won't get an articling position. And so there's no account taken of the medium to long-term needs of the rule of law, and that's a problem. I'm critical because it drives people to the kinds of firms which can afford to hire articling students. So you talked earlier about the mismatch between legal demand and the provision of legal services. That's part of the reason why. And I'm critical because even if the Law Society wanted to police articling more assiduously, they just don't have the resources to. So we take the most vulnerable members of our profession, people at the very beginning, and we make them be the police officers, and that's just not fair. So those are the reasons I'm critical of. It's again, not of individual articling experiences. I have nothing but happy memories of my own, but I just think as a system, it's not very good.
I've heard of a new kind of articling that now exists, I think, only in Ontario.
Yes, that's right. Yep.
Would a program like that be useful for students in other parts of the country?
Oh, I think so. The problem with what they have in Ontario, though, is the business model. It's a very expensive model, and so they need to sort out a better way to make it financially sustainable. That's the problem. But as a system, it's much better.
Fantastic. Well, as always, it's an absolute pleasure to speak with you, Dean Holloway. You've really pulled the wool off of, or you've really pulled the curtain back of what's taking place within law schools and shared your insights about how we can improve things going forward. So really appreciate your time. Thanks for being with us.
Thank you, Zach. It's always a delight to be with my friends at Goodlawyer. Thank you.
Appreciate it.